December 18th, 2024. Oh, here we are, lads, on the precipice of a brand new year. Feeling good. It's good to be alive. It's good to be clean. Had a good night last night. I was strolling around the seafront there. There's a small huddle of maybe 30 or 40 huts selling everything from used shoes for about 20 pesos. You can buy some overpriced chicken on a stick, $1 per stick. I thought to myself, lads, these are mad. How are you going to sell little bits of meat on a stick for $1 when it's about 10 pesos everywhere else? But I guess it's the location, right? So I was strolling around. I took a phone call from my sister, had a good chat about boundaries. And that's ironic, actually, because when I woke up this morning, one of the other fellas from my meetings had sent me a PDF on boundaries, and in chapter 1 it described them as similar enough to the human cell. So the human cell has a perimeter, right? And it deflects any poison but attracts the nutrients in order for it to stay alive. And it also excretes all the excretion, all the stuff that's left over, just poops it out. So that's how the membrane works, and that's the fundamental building blocks of all things alive. So it's like the higher power built into the living organism, a system which he hopes that we as humans would be able to reproduce, because God gave us an immune system, but he didn't give us the mental equivalent. So we have to be aware when people and places and things get in our way, how to react. Do we deflect and protect ourselves like the human cell, or do we allow the poison in? And it's very confusing, especially in relationships. So I had a nice conversation with her, and then I saw a foreigner, and I said, I think I recognize that guy. So I stuck my hand up in the 20,000-year-old tradition of how to say hello. We don't just do that in Ireland, we do that all over the world. Hello there, sir. And so he stuck his hand back up in reply. And that for me is enough for a pass in the test of life. That means he's all right to go over to and say hello. And sure enough, I says, how are you getting on? And he said, I'm fine, sit down. And so he's a man by the name of Brandon from North Carolina. He's been living out here for a while. He has a 2-year-old daughter. And we discussed the sun, the moon, and the stars. He has Irish ancestry. And we discussed how maybe people who have a little bit of Irish in their blood are often crazy. I don't know what that's about. So as we walked around, I says to him, will we go for a coffee? And he said, yeah, that's a good idea. He says, I quit alcohol. And I said, will you? I says, that's gas, because I divorced myself from alcohol quite a long time ago too. Myself and alcohol are no longer in a relationship. And so off we went, and we were going to go to Bo's Coffee. I'm just outside Bo's Coffee now, right? And he says, did you know actually McDonald's coffee is 65 pesos and Bo's Coffee is 170 pesos? Well, Lady Synchronicity had her way once again, because I said to him, that's quite interesting. I was only reading there. There's the book I'm reading at the moment, Die with Zero. Die with Zero. And the main hypothesis is, if you have any money in your bank account when you die, you've kind of lost the game of life, especially if you've been working. And he gave us an example, a woman that was living in America who was earning $60,000. He said she was in the top 50% projectile of earners in America. So with the 60,000, he said, It works out at 48,000 after tax. She saves a massive chunk of it to put in her 401k. She lives on 30,000, which would be near impossible in America in this day and age. And she saves all the money into the 401k. It works out on a $60,000 salary, she's making $20 an hour. I'm making $30 an hour living in the Philippines. I work about 15 to 20 hours a week, which gives me a salary almost equivalent to hers. So let's reverse. She's got $19 an hour. In her mind, she needs to put all the money in the 401k. So the long story short is that if in 20 years time from when she was interviewed, she retires as per her plan, it's more probable that she could die with anywhere up to 130,000. So he said, say for example, if she died with 130,000, which represents 10 years of the life that she was saving for in retirement. She dies at the age of 80 because she was saving for 90. At the age of 80 she dies, which is a grand old age, but that would mean that 130,000 is left in her bank account, and that is equivalent to working 50 hours a week for 2.5 years, or 6,626 hours. So now, because you haven't incorporated the philosophy of die with zero, you've now, after died, having for no reason at all spent 6,236 hours. Well, it's not for no reason at all. You've done it because you haven't bothered to think about it, because nobody's ever put these seeds in your head. And anyway, we went to McDonald's, we got our 60-cent coffee. It was on him, and I told him a little bit about, look, the situation is for me about how I came out of a relationship last year and I was losing my mind, and maybe it's me. I'm just too obsessive. I've got too many things going on in my head. And he said, because he's a real tall man, he probably played basketball for NBA. When I walk into a restaurant or a public place, let's say, on average, he says around 50% of the females there will turn over and look at him and smile or nod or hold his gaze for a couple of seconds. So every time he walks into a restaurant or a McDonald's, 50% of the girls look at him. And I said, yeah, I know that. I know the feeling you're talking about, because we always get looked at wherever we go. I don't think I have 50% of the girls look at me, but I'm not a tall, handsome man from North Carolina. I'm a relatively tall, quasi-handsome lunatic from Ireland, but that's besides the point. The girls wouldn't know the difference. Maybe they just like tall. But he said, in our wiring as men, obviously that's going to play with our heads, and we don't even realize it. So all these girls, if they're looking at us for any length of time, subconsciously in the back of our head, there's this thing that's going, hold on a minute, I could have any woman in this city, right? I'm actually the dog's bollocks. I need to spread my seed. I need to have sexual relations with as many women as possible. If you follow it through, that was his train of thought. And I said, no, look, I don't think that when loads of girls look at me when I walk into public places, that it's creating a situation in my head where I want to fuck every girl in the city. Maybe if I was 20 or 25 years older, younger, I might have. Or just to go back, imagine if you were older, if you were 25 years older, or maybe that's why so many of the guys that I had asked for advice were able to tell me, you just have to ride through the storm. These women are loyal and loving and caring, but they are feisty, and they are controlling, and they are manipulative, and they wouldn't know a guilt trip from their arsehole nor elbow. But maybe it's because they don't have the same situation as the likes of me and Mr. North Carolina, who's the same age as me, or for that matter the young fella, the version of me that's 20 years old, how would he react in this city or on this island? It is food for thought. It reminds me of like when I was 12 and 13 years old, and actually another synchronicity. There was a guy on my outreach last night who told me I really need to go back and look at some of my issues that I would have had when I was growing up as a child. When I was 12 or 13 years old, my dad had separated from my mum, and the two of them had been in court for years, and my dad would go from one minute saying how much he loves mum to the next minute saying that he's going to kick the door in and smash the house up. And I do have a memory of something like that too. But I remember he had a friend of his by the name of Finbar. And if Ronan or Niall are listening, to remember the story about Finbar. I was about 12, so Niall was about 10, Ronan, you were about 8. And Dad was travelling to the Philippines. He went 2 or 3 times. And he would tell us about Finbar. What an excellent man Finbar is. He's retired to the Philippines. He has a big boat. He likes to go there, and he fills the boat up with women. And Dad had pictures of him on this boat with Finbar, with these young girls, the same kind of girls that I'm surrounded by, who like me because I've got a great personality. Well, didn't the sun shine out of his arse, this man, Mr. Finbar? And I remember Dad said, he's got such a great life philosophy. His idea is, there's nothing better than to die on a bar stool in the Philippines. Wouldn't that be great? To die on a bar, sitting at a bar in the Philippines surrounded by beautiful women. And for years, I used to think, and I agreed with him, yeah, that's a great way to die. Sitting on a bar stool in the Philippines and drink yourself to death. How heroic. Yeah, that's amazing. Don't get caught up in the 9 to 5 or the rigs and reels of the rat race. Die on a bar stool in the Philippines. And fast forward then, whatever it is, 20 or 30 years later, and I'll try and leave you on this little depiction. 20 or 30 years later, adult Connor, age 30, having not even reached a rock bottom in Melbourne. But I had spent 2 years going from fucking titty bars, falling off aeroplanes, making bits of myself in Melbourne, Sydney and Perth. And then me and another Irishman rocked up to Glenn's bar in Bohol in Alona Beach, and the memory came back to me of Finbar, who died. He did end up dying on that stool, or the equivalent. He probably didn't, literally keel over on the stool, but he would have been renting a little shack for 10,000 pesos and probably died having drank Tanduay for breakfast, like many of the alcoholics out there. I sat on those same bar stools from 12 o'clock until 2 in the morning. I did it for 6 months trying to figure out the meaning of life. And there is no meaning. While I was sitting on those bar stools, my granddad died in a nursing home. He spent his whole life working hard. He's a retired judge. He became an RTE DJ. He was in that nursing home for 8 years before he passed away, or something like that. My granny would visit him regularly. He died of dementia, an old man. Was he happy? Was he like fuck? Was Finbar happy when he died with a bottle of Tanduay in a $10,000 shack? Was he like fuck? Is anybody happy when they die? Very doubtful. So it makes a hell of a lot of sense then to listen to Edgar Tolle. The power of now. I live in the moment. living today. Breathe in, breathe out. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I'll say a little prayer for my dad and my granddad. I love you guys. I'm doing this my way.
I've got to get back for my kids' party at the school quite soon.
We'll finish our walk first and we'll have
Yeah.
do you have time for another coffee?
Yeah, I mean, if you want good coffee, I mean, their coffee's right. It's a bit the same as that coffee you just had in that place. I think they got better coffee in 7-Eleven, but there's only 40 for a coffee in there. I'm a bit embarrassed. Did I tell you this morning? I go to see this guy. I went to see him the other day because I got a computer that just stopped, and I looked up the computer repairs. And he's just down the road. He's Ballybag, so I went to see him. And he's a very interesting guy, actually.
And what, did he try and rip you off?
No, not at all. I'm far from it. And no, he said he couldn't fix it because it was too complicated for him. I said okay. And then the other desk, and I saw he was really doing like amplifiers and things like that.
Hello.